Rocky. Well, to continue what I was saying before the phone cut me off, right now what I'm doing is I'm emptying the water from these bottles into my kettle over there, and I'm boiling it. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. There we go. Into my kettle right there, and I'm boiling it. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm going to put it into these bags here, these drawstring bags with the white plastic garbage bags inside of them. The white plastic garbage bags are because sometimes these bottles will leak. And if that happens, I don't want to have happen. I was doing this last year. It was my first year living like this, my first winter. And I didn't know very much, and I still don't know very much, but I'm learning as I go. And I had a cap pop off one of these, and it was full of scalding hot water in the bed. And it scalded me, and it filled my bed up with scalding hot water, which of course cooled down. So then I had a cold, wet bed to sleep in. And that was no fun. So now, I put them in these bags, and what I do, there's my good boy, hey you. I put them in these bags here, and I clip off the end of the bag with one of these little office type paper clip deals. You see, I just twist the bag around on the end, twist it up, and then I clip, oh wait a minute here. Here we go now. If I can get a hold of it here, I'll show you. See, that just opens up there, and I just clip that right onto the twisted up end of the bag, and that seals it shut. And anyway, I do that. That works really well. And I actually have had these bottles leak a little bit. I haven't had a cap pop right off like I had happen last year, but I have had them leak. And when I've taken them out to boil the water again, I've actually had a lot of water inside of the plastic bag. And I didn't even know that the bottle had leaked because I hadn't, because it hadn't affected me at all. So these drawstring bags I bought through Amazon, I got a whole bunch of them, and it was like about, I forget now, but it was around $10, you know, to buy a bunch of these. I think there was 8 or 10 of them in the package, and yeah, they work pretty well anyway. And so that's what I do. Keeps my bed warm. Now let me check my sauce here. Unfortunately, my little shelf came off. There's my little shelf there. I missed that, but you can see the tab. See, there's a tab there to hold it on. The tab there has come off. So what I'm going to have to do eventually, I'm not going to do it today, but I'll drill a couple of holes through the shelf, and well, if I'm able to, yeah, through here, through this lip here. There isn't much to work with, but there's enough that I'll be able to do it. And I'll drill a couple holes for the side of the stove, and I'll attach the shelf back to the stove that way. I'll just attach it permanently is all I'll do. And that'll work anyway. There's my sauce I'm making for my pasta. That's just fresh tomatoes all cubed up, and some extra virgin olive oil, and some garlic seasoning. Pretty simple. It's really good though. I'm boiling my dishwater. One trick that I used, and I used it even when I had my house, for cooking and doing dishes, it's actually called the Army method of washing dishes, and it's because apparently the U.S. Army uses it in their kitchens. What you do is you have a sink full of soapy water, sink full of warm dishwater, and as you dirty utensils and pots and things, you just wash them as you dirty them. So whenever you're finished with a utensil, you toss it into the water, and then when you have a little break, you go over and you wash that stuff up. And then you have an empty sink for the next load that has to go in. And that saves you having a whole mess of dirty dishes and utensils laying around in your kitchen, in your way. and it also saves you from having to do a huge cleanup at the end. And I found that that works very well, and I still try to do that. Although because I have to boil my water now, it's a little less efficient, you know, and I had trouble getting my fire going today, so that's really set me back. And I think I am probably going to run out of daylight. You can see I used the tea light candle to get my fire going. I'm probably going to run out of daylight before I'm finished here now because of that. But if I can get the main stuff that I need to do done, that'll be the main thing. Yeah. Also, there's not a lot of room. When you're living like this, if you're living in a camper or a tent, you're not going to have the room that you had in a house, or even in an apartment in most cases, unless you have a tiny little apartment in New York City or something like that. You're just not going to have the same room that you had when you had a house or an apartment. And I'm used to having a lot of room because I did live in a house prior to this happening. And prior to living in the house, I lived in a huge apartment that took up half of the top floor of an old bank building that was built in 1911. And I had a lot of room up there, I'll tell you. There are people living in houses that didn't have the room I had. I had walk-in closets that you could use as bedrooms if you needed to. It was just that there's just that much room. Anyway, so this is quite a difference for me anyway. I'm struggling trying to work with the space that I have now because I got spoiled not having very much space. Having too much space really, and now I don't have enough. So anyway, I'm struggling with that. But the thing is, another reason to wash your dishes as you dirty them is because you don't have a lot of space. Basically, it's better not to have a lot of dirty dishes piled up when you are already short of space. So if I can wash them and get them put away where they belong, then they're not on my counters and they're not in my sink, they're not in my way. Basically, that's the idea. So the Army method of dishwashing is really invaluable to me right now. And like I say, that's something that I did even when I had my house and my apartment before that. And I found it was very efficient. Hey, beautiful boy. You're a good boy. You're going to climb up here now, aren't you? Okay, okay, your claws are hurting, sweetie. There you go. Okay. He dug his claws in so he didn't fall. Which I don't blame him for, but it did hurt. Anyway, you can see my sauce is coming along nicely. I don't really have room yet for my pot. One thing I'm going to do, because I don't want that boiling over into my sauce if I have the lid off the sauce when it boils, which it will do eventually. So I'm going to shift this around here. One thing I try to be careful of is I don't want my handles to be right over the hot stove any more than they have to be, because then you go to grab onto that and it's hot and it'll burn your hand. And of course these plastic handles, they could even melt. Usually I have my kettle close to the stovepipe if I'm not doing what I'm doing here. And in fact I might move it now because my sauce is already cooking pretty good, and I can just use the heat that's already built up in there to cook it for quite a while, and I'll get this going better. But the thing is, because it's cooler on this end, it's hottest around the pipe. Basically this here too, I always put the handle as far away from the pipe as I can because the pipe gets really hot. And I don't want this handle catching fire because it's just a wooden handle. And I also don't want to go to grab the handle. If it's flipped over this way and it's left there like that, and then I go up like this and I grab it, it's going to be hot, it's going to burn my hand. So I don't want that. So you can see I let my handle hang over the edge, but I try to do it in such a way too that I'm not going to catch it walking by, like walking through here, and end up pulling the pot off the stove and losing my good sauce that I'm making. You can see how good that looks. It's a beautiful sauce. It's really simple and it's really good. Anyway, that's just a little more of what I've learned. I'm certainly not a genius, and I'm still learning. And anybody else living the way I'm living would probably know far more than I do by now. But I have learned a few things. And, mostly through trial and error. I've made mistakes. I've hurt myself. I've damaged things. I've I've done some damage anyway, and to myself and to things I've had.